And I think we're live. Yeah, so today I just want to talk a little bit about the future of the Supreme Court in light of the recent decision to enjoin a Louisiana law which restricted, well, the way it was built was limiting a woman's access to abortion. So Louisiana followed Texas in enacting a law which would force not hospital, well, basically force abortion providers, abortionists, to have admitting privileges in local hospitals. So if you had someone who was performing an abortion, they had to have admitting privileges. And the practical effect of that would have been to close down all but, I believe, one abortion clinic in the entire state. And this is something that's not discussed a lot in the pro-abort, feminist, pink hat wearing community. The fact that these abortionists, they're basically quacks. They're like patent medicine salesmen back in the 19th century. They're not real doctors. I mean, some of them have medical degrees. There are actually doctors, unfortunately, who violate the Hippocratic Oath and murder unborn children. In fact, there was a documentary, but not surprisingly, not that many. People don't realize that even though there are over 800,000 abortions, these doctors, a lot of it's a very small minority of doctors, of people who are sworn to protect their patients' lives, that actually go out and commit murder. Even though there are 800,000 abortions, a lot of these abortion doctors perform tens of thousands of abortions. So it's confined to like a very small percentage of the medical community, which is why it's so important that these clinics are shut down legally, or made financially insolvent. I think defunding Planned Parenthood would actually be a good strategy in that regard. But anyway, to get back to the case, it would have forced most of the clinics to close because they did not have admitting privileges. And and excuse me. And it was like I said, it followed in the wake of Texas, which passed a similar law, which was struck down. This law was actually upheld by an appeals court, which is why it was put before the Supreme Court, and in a 5-4 decision, they reversed the appeals court ruling and stopped this law from going into effect. So there will actually have to persuade the Supreme Court that this is not injurious to abortion doctors, basically baby killers. They'll have to present the argument that this does not adversely affect the ability of a woman to terminate her pregnancy and the pocketbooks of abortionists. That's the upshot of this. And how they're going to rule eventually, it's kind of a question mark, because John Roberts did vote to uphold a similar law. So it's not foreordained that they're going to strike down this law, but it wouldn't shock me if they did, just based on the fact that John Roberts has turned into an Anthony Kennedy clone. Now, I know some people would dispute this because he was one of the justices that dissented in Oberfell, the gay marriage case, and they like to portray him as slightly more conservative. And I mean, in certain respects, he is, but the nuts and bolts of it is that he's basically cut from the same cloth as Kennedy. He was someone that was portrayed as a cipher, a stealth conservative that's going to get on the court and be an originalist. He didn't have the checkered judicial history that someone like Robert Bork did. So he was going to get on the court as a stealth conservative and then do away with these horrible, unconstitutional precedents like Roe v. Wade or the Plyler decision, on immigration and abortion. He's going to be with us. And the fact is, it's been the complete opposite. He's been a terrible justice. He was the one that's responsible for upholding Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act, one of the worst pieces of domestic legislation in the past 30 years, and something that's going to wreck our healthcare system and our economy and kind of set us on the glide path to socialized medicine, to single payer. He upheld that. He's been a disaster. Honestly, the second worst decision of the Bush administration after the Iraq debacle. And to be truthful, I would have preferred Harriet Miers if be on the Supreme Court, not in place of Justice Alito, but if Bush had appointed Harriet Miers as his first SCOTUS pick, I would have. She probably, in all likelihood, she would have been a better Supreme Court justice and more faithful to the Constitution than he has been. So this is. I wouldn't put much stock in that. The only hope right now for people who are looking to reshape and refashion the Supreme Court is if Ruth Bader Ginsburg or Stephen Breyer, if one of them decides to retire during the remainder of Trump's first term, that would be fantastic. That would be, honestly, that would be great, because he would have President Trump would have the opportunity to replace them with an originalist, someone like Alito or even Gorsuch, and Roberts would be confined. His role as Chief Justice would be neutered. The ability to sign opinions, and I'm guessing, I'm not positive, but if there's a 5-4 conservative originalist majority, he would join them. He would not want to be sitting at the losers table, the nerd club, since everything he does is predicated on popularity and power. And he's a very he has a very strange judicial ethic. I think he would join the conservatives. He would jump back, and even though he would be pretending to a large extent, I think it would be good for the court, because he would join the 6-3 conservative majority. He wouldn't want to be. I mean, there's another possibility that he would just become. He would see this as an opportunity to become like John Paul Stevens, like go completely rogue. But that would be completely out of character, because I mean, he's wanted to be Chief Justice for his entire life, and he doesn't want to spend the next 30 years. I actually think retiring would be an option for him at that point, rather than staying in the permanent minority, issuing these dissents that are going to be applauded by the Washington Post and New York Times, but have no real effective power. I think if you get a 5-4 conservative majority, he would move from the 4 to the 5. He would want to be able to steer the court in his horrible kind of principleless direction. But I think that's what we should look forward to. The fact when Ruth Bader Ginsburg or Stephen Breyer, perhaps maybe both, hopefully, will be replaced on the Supreme Court.